My marriage ran like a Swiss watch for 22 years, but lately it had been telling the wrong time. Hayes Rellin, certified public accountant, devoted father, and apparently the most oblivious husband in suburban Minnesota. That's me in a nutshell. At 45, I thought I had life figured out. The house with the white picket fence, 2 kids in college, a wife who still turned heads at neighborhood barbecues. The American dream, wrapped up neat as a tax return. But dreams have a way of becoming nightmares when you're not paying attention. It started with little things. Lana, working late more often, her phone always face down on the counter, credit card alerts for restaurants I'd never been to. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give me that practiced smile, the one she used on difficult clients at the advertising agency where she worked as an executive. "Just busy season, honey," she'd say, already turning away. "You know how it is." I did know how it was. I was an accountant. Busy seasons were my specialty. But advertising agencies didn't have tax deadlines driving their schedules, and Lana's busy season had lasted 8 months. The evening everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I was in my home office reviewing quarterly reports for a client when I heard voices from the kitchen. Lana was on the phone, her tone lower than usual. "No, Joel, not tonight. Hayes is home." A pause. "Thursday works better. Same place." Joel, her boss. Joel Reimer, 50 years old, divorced twice, drove a BMW that cost more than most people's annual salary. I'd met him at company parties, the kind of guy who wore expensive cologne and talked too loud about his golf handicap. I sat there, staring at my computer screen, watching the numbers blur together. There had to be an explanation. A work project, a client meeting, something innocent. But the way she said his name, soft, familiar, made my stomach twist. "Dinner's ready," Lana called from the kitchen, her voice bright and cheerful again. I closed my laptop and walked to the dining room, where she'd set out Chinese takeout on our good plates. She did that sometimes, tried to make ordinary things seem special. It used to charm me. "How was your day?" I asked, settling into my chair. "The usual chaos. We're pitching a new campaign for that hotel chain I mentioned. Joel thinks we have a real shot at landing it." Joel again. I counted 3 more mentions during dinner, each one casual, professional. But I'd been married long enough to recognize the difference between mentioning a colleague and talking about someone who occupied your thoughts. After dinner, I helped clear the dishes while Lana checked her phone. Her face lit up at whatever message she'd received, then quickly shifted to neutral when she noticed me watching. "Work emergency," she said, already typing a response. "I might need to go in early tomorrow." I nodded and loaded the dishwasher, my mind racing. Early mornings, late nights, mysterious phone calls. The pieces were forming a picture I didn't want to see. That night, lying in bed beside her, I listened to Lana's breathing settle into sleep. She used to curl up against me, her head on my shoulder, but now she stayed on her side of the mattress. When had that changed? When had we become 2 strangers sharing a bed? I stared at the ceiling, running through the past few months in my mind. The credit card charges at restaurants across town, the new clothes she claimed were for client meetings, the way she'd started showering immediately when she got home from work, as if washing something away. My wife was having an affair. The thought hit me like a slap, sudden and stinging. Part of me wanted to wake her up, demand the truth, have it out right there in our bedroom. But another part, the accountant in me, wanted evidence. Facts, numbers that added up. The next morning, Lana was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting. Love you." The words looked hollow on paper, like she'd written them out of habit rather than feeling. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring out at our backyard. The garden Lana had planted when we first moved in was overgrown now, neglected. Like our marriage, apparently. My phone buzzed with a text from our daughter, Amelia. "Dad, can you call me later? Need advice on something." At 19, Amelia was studying journalism at the University of Wisconsin. She had my analytical mind, but Lana's gift for reading people. Our son Ross, 21, was finishing his degree in engineering at Minnesota State. Both kids were smart, driven, and completely unaware that their parents' marriage was falling apart. How do you tell your children that everything they thought they knew about their family was built on lies? I spent the day at work, trying to focus on spreadsheets and tax codes, but my mind kept wandering. Every time my phone rang, I expected it to be Lana with some excuse about working late. Instead, she texted at 3. "Dinner with the team tonight. Don't wait up." The team. Right. I drove home through our quiet neighborhood, past houses where other families were probably sitting down to dinner together, sharing their days, being honest with each other. The normalcy of it made my chest ache. Our house felt too big with just me in it. I heated up leftover pizza and ate standing at the counter, wondering when I'd become a stranger in my own life. The silence pressed against my ears until I turned on the television just for background noise. At 10 o'clock, I heard Lana's car in the driveway. I stayed in my recliner pretending to watch the news as she came through the front door. "Hey," she said, kicking off her heels. "Sorry I'm so late. The client dinner ran long." She looked perfect, not a hair out of place. Her lipstick was fresh, her clothes unwrinkled. If she'd been at a business dinner for 4 hours, she'd hidden the evidence well. "How did it go?" I asked, not looking away from the television. "Great. I think we really impressed them." She sat on the edge of the couch, studying my profile. "You okay? You seem quiet." I wanted to laugh. After months of lies and deception, she was worried about me being quiet. "Just tired," I said. "Long day." She nodded and headed upstairs. I heard the shower start a few minutes later, another piece of evidence in the case I was building against my own wife. The next evening, I was working late at my office when my colleague Mark stopped by my door. Mark Henderson was my age, divorced 3 years ago, and had the weary look of a man who'd learned life's lessons the hard way. "You look like hell," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Thanks. You really know how to boost a guy's confidence." "I'm serious. What's going on?" I considered brushing him off, but Mark had been through his own marital nightmare. If anyone would understand, it was him. "I think Lana's cheating," I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth. Mark leaned back in his chair. "What makes you think that?" I told him about the late nights, the phone calls, the way she'd changed. Mark listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious. "Could be innocent," he said finally. "But probably isn't. Trust your gut, Hayes. Mine was screaming at me for months before I finally listened." "What did you do?" "Hired a private investigator. Best money I ever spent. Gave me the proof I needed and saved me a fortune in the divorce." I shook my head. "I can't do that. Following her around, taking pictures, it feels wrong." "You know what feels wrong? Being lied to every day by the person who promised to love and honor you." Mark stood up. "But it's your call. Just remember, the longer you wait, the more time she has to hide assets, plan her exit strategy, whatever. Don't be naive about this." That night, I lay in bed listening to Lana sleep, thinking about Mark's words. She looked peaceful, innocent even, but appearances could be deceiving. I'd learned that much. The doorbell rang at 8:30 the next evening, right as we were finishing dinner. Lana and I looked at each other across the table. We weren't expecting anyone. "I'll get it," I said, pushing back from my chair. I opened the front door to find a woman I recognized, but had never formally met. Brielle Torin, Joel's wife. She was elegant in that understated way wealthy women managed, with silver-streaked hair and intelligent eyes. She held a manila folder in her manicured hands. "Mr. Rellin, I'm Brielle Torin. I think we need to talk." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The confrontation I'd been dreading. Joel's wife had discovered the affair and come to destroy my marriage in person. "Who is it, honey?" Lana called from the dining room. Brielle heard her voice and smiled, not the expression I'd expected from a wronged wife seeking vengeance. "Actually," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the house, "I came to thank her." I stood in the doorway, staring at Brielle Torin, trying to process what she'd just said. Thank Lana? For what? Ruining her marriage? "Hayes?" Lana's voice had changed, the casual tone replaced by something sharper. "Who's at the door?" Brielle stepped forward slightly, not pushing past me, but making it clear she intended to come in. "May I? This conversation is better had sitting down." I opened the door wider, my mind spinning. Lana appeared in the hallway, and I watched her face cycle through emotions, confusion, recognition, and finally something that looked like panic. "Brielle," Lana said carefully. "What a surprise." "Hello, Lana. You look well." Brielle's voice remained pleasant, conversational. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by unannounced. I have something that belongs to both of you." She held up the manila folder, and I noticed her hands were steady. Whatever this was about, Brielle Torin was in complete control. "Please sit," I said, gesturing toward the living room. My manners kicked in automatically, even as my world tilted sideways. Lana perched on the edge of the couch like she might need to run. I took the chair across from Brielle, who settled herself with the practiced grace of someone comfortable in any social situation. "I imagine you're both wondering why I'm here," Brielle began, placing the folder on the coffee table between us. "The short answer is that your affair saved my marriage." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, not shock at the confirmation of what I'd suspected, but at the matter-of-fact way she'd said it. "Brielle, I think there's been some misunderstanding," Lana started. 3 years, Brielle interrupted gently. "That's how long you and Joel have been involved. Would you like me to be more specific? It started at the Morrison Hotel during the advertising conference in March 2021, room 412. Joel charged it to his personal credit card, unusual for him, since he typically uses the company card for business travel." Lana's face had gone pale. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know quite a lot, actually." Brielle opened the folder with deliberate care. "I've become something of an expert on both your schedules over the past few months. For instance, your client dinner last night. Joel was at Romano's on 5th Street from 6 to 9:30. The reservation was under his name, table for 2. She pulled out a receipt and placed it on the table. I could see Joel's signature at the bottom, along with a tip that was more than I spent on groceries in a week. "You see, Hayes," Brielle continued, turning to me, "I started noticing changes in Joel about 8 months ago. He was happier, more attentive. He bought new clothes, started working out again, even whistled around the house. For a woman married to a man for 15 years, these changes were significant." I found my voice. "You hired someone to follow them, eventually. But first, I did what any suspicious wife would do. I started paying attention. Joel's calendar, his credit card statements, his phone records. Amazing what you can learn when you actually look." She pulled out a printed calendar, color-coded and detailed. Blue highlights marked Joel's business trips. Red ones marked Lana's late work nights. The patterns were unmistakable. 18 months ago, Joel started taking more overnight trips, always to cities where Lana's company had clients. Always staying at hotels just nice enough to be romantic, but not so expensive as to raise red flags with accounting. Lana was staring at the calendar like it might burst into flames. "Brielle, please, let me explain." "Oh, I'd love to hear your explanation." For the first time, Brielle's pleasant mask slipped slightly. "Please, tell me how you accidentally ended up in hotel rooms with my husband 18 times over the past year and a half." The number hit me like a physical blow. 18 times. Not a mistake, not a moment of weakness, a sustained, deliberate betrayal. "It wasn't supposed to happen," Lana said, her voice barely above a whisper. We were working on a project together, spending long hours. The Hartley Hotel campaign, Brielle said, which ended 14 months ago. Yet somehow you continued having these work meetings at various hotels across 3 states. She pulled out another document, phone records with calls highlighted in yellow. You two spoke an average of 47 minutes per day. That's more than most married couples manage. I stared at the evidence spread across my coffee table, feeling like I was watching someone else's life implode. The woman I'd shared a bed with for over 2 decades had been living a complete double life, and I'd been too blind to see it. Hayes, Lana turned to me, her eyes filling with tears. You have to understand, we were going through a rough patch. You were so focused on work, so distant. I felt alone, and Joel was there, and he listened. Stop. The word came out harder than I'd intended. Just stop. Brielle was watching me with something that might have been sympathy. I know this is difficult to hear, but there's more you need to know. She reached into the folder again and pulled out bank statements, not mine, but Joel's. Certain transactions were circled in red ink. Joel has been supplementing your wife's lifestyle during their affair. Dinners, hotels, gifts, but also more substantial things. The bracelet she's wearing right now? Joel bought it 6 weeks ago. $2,000 at Tiffany. I looked at Lana's wrist, at the delicate gold chain I'd complimented just last week. She'd told me it was a gift from a grateful client. The spa weekend she took last month while you were visiting your mother? Joel paid for that too. The story about her college roommate inviting her to Napa Valley? Joel owns a timeshare there. Each revelation was another weight added to my chest. Not just the affair, but the lies built on lies. The complete fabrication of the life I thought we were living together. Why are you telling us this? I asked. If you knew about the affair, why didn't you confront Joel directly? Brielle smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. Because, Hayes, your wife did me the greatest favor of my life. You see, while I was investigating Joel's affair, I discovered something much more interesting. She pulled out a thick stack of papers, legal documents with official seals. Joel has been embezzling from his company for the past 5 years. Small amounts at first, then larger ones as he got comfortable. He's been using a complex system of fake vendor accounts and inflated invoices to siphon money into personal accounts. The affair gave me the excuse I needed to dig deeper into his finances. Lana was staring at Brielle like she'd grown a second head. That's impossible. Joel would never. Joel has stolen nearly $400,000 from Reimer and Associates. Money that should have gone to employee bonuses, company improvements, client services. Money that helped fund your little romantic getaways. The room fell silent, except for the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. I felt like I was drowning in information, each new piece of evidence pulling me further under. I've turned everything over to the FBI, Brielle continued calmly. Joel was arrested this morning at his office. By now, the company's accounts are frozen, and a federal investigation is underway. Lana's face had gone white. Arrested? Wire fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, quite a list. His lawyer thinks he's looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison, assuming he doesn't take a plea deal. I found myself thinking like an accountant, even in the midst of personal disaster. The company will be audited. Every transaction, every expense account, every employee who might have been complicit, yes. Brielle's eyes fixed on Lana, particularly those who received gifts or benefits that could be traced to embezzled funds. The implications hit Lana and me at the same time. The bracelet, the spa weekend, the expensive dinners, all of it potentially evidence in a federal crime. I didn't know, Lana whispered. I swear, I had no idea where the money was coming from. Perhaps not, Brielle said. But ignorance isn't a defense when you're accepting stolen goods. The FBI will want to interview you, of course. They'll want to know about every gift, every trip, every expense Joel covered during your relationship. I watched my wife crumble before my eyes, the weight of her choices finally becoming clear. She'd thought she was having a simple affair, messy but manageable. Instead, she'd become entangled in a federal crime. "There's one more thing," Brielle said, reaching into the folder a final time. "The reason I came to thank you, Lana." She pulled out a document I didn't recognize, some kind of financial statement with Joel's name at the top. Joel was planning to leave me. He'd been moving money into accounts I didn't know about, consulting with divorce lawyers, preparing to take half of everything we'd built together and disappear with his young girlfriend. "You." Lana's mouth fell open. "He never said anything about divorce." "Of course not. Why would he complicate things with messy emotional conversations when he could simply execute his plan and present you with a fait accompli? He'd already put a deposit down on a condo in Scottsdale, 2 bedrooms, mountain views, perfect for a fresh start. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Joel had been planning to destroy 2 marriages, ruin his own company, and escape to Arizona with his stolen money and my wife. "But thanks to your affair," Brielle continued, "I started investigating his finances early enough to stop him. The money he stole will be recovered. The company might survive. And I'll get to keep the house I've spent 15 years making into a home." She closed the folder and stood up, smoothing her skirt with practiced elegance. "So you see, Lana, I really do owe you a debt of gratitude. If you hadn't been quite so obvious about sneaking around with my husband, I might never have discovered what he was really up to. Your affair saved me from losing everything." She turned to me, her expression softening slightly. "I'm sorry you had to learn about this the way you did, Hayes. But I thought you deserved to know the truth. All of it." I walked her to the door, my legs feeling unsteady. On the threshold, she paused and looked back at Lana, who was still sitting on the couch like a broken doll. "One last thing," Brielle said. "Joel's lawyer will probably try to claim you were an innocent victim, manipulated by an older, more powerful man. That might help you avoid criminal charges, but Hayes deserves better than a woman who would betray him for jewelry and spa weekends." The door closed with a soft click, leaving Lana and me alone with the wreckage of our marriage spread across the coffee table, like evidence at a crime scene. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Lana sat motionless on the couch, staring at the papers Brielle had left behind. I remained standing by the door, my hand still on the knob, as if I could somehow undo the last hour by opening it again. "Hayes," Lana's voice was barely a whisper. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I turned to face her, and the woman I'd loved for over 2 decades looked like a stranger. "Explain how you accidentally spent 3 years in hotel rooms with your boss. Explain how you accidentally accepted thousands of dollars in gifts. Explain how you accidentally helped him plan a new life in Arizona." She flinched at each word. "It wasn't like that. Joel never mentioned Arizona, never talked about leaving Brielle. I thought—" "You thought what? That he was going to keep you as his mistress forever? That this was just some extended vacation from your real life?" Lana stood up abruptly, her hands shaking. "You don't understand what it was like. You were always working, always distracted. When was the last time you really looked at me, Hayes? When was the last time you made me feel like I mattered?" The accusation hit me like a slap, and for a moment, I almost bought into it. Almost let her shift the blame onto my shoulders. But then I looked at the evidence scattered across our coffee table, 3 years of deliberate deception documented in receipts and phone records. "So this is my fault?" I asked quietly. "I worked too much, so you had no choice but to lie to me every day for 3 years?" "That's not what I'm saying." "Because here's what I remember, Lana. I remember asking you to take that vacation to Maine last summer, and you said you were too busy with work. Turns out you were busy, just not with work. I remember suggesting we go to counseling when things felt off between us, and you said we didn't need outside help. I remember trying to plan romantic dinners, weekend getaways, date nights, and you always had an excuse. Her face crumpled. Hayes, please. I remember our anniversary last year. I made reservations at that restaurant downtown, the one where we had our first date. You canceled 2 hours before because Joel needed you to work late on a crisis. Except there was no crisis, was there? Just another night in another hotel room. The tears started then, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her. Just a cold, analytical clarity that frightened me with its intensity. How many times did you look me in the eye and lie? I asked. How many times did you come home from being with him and kiss me hello? How many times did you let me worry about our marriage, let me think I was the problem while you were living a completely different life? I never meant for it to go so far, she sobbed. It started as just attention. Someone who listened to me, who made me feel attractive again. I was going to end it, but then it became too comfortable, too lucrative. I gestured at the bracelet on her wrist. Hard to give up the gifts, and the fancy hotels, and the feeling of being special. She yanked the bracelet off and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and fell behind the bookshelf with a tiny metallic sound. I'll give everything back. The jewelry, I'll make this right somehow. With what money? Joel's assets are frozen, and anything he bought you is evidence in a federal investigation. You might not have a choice about giving it back. The reality of her situation was starting to sink in. I could see it in her eyes, the recognition that this wasn't just a marriage crisis but potentially a legal disaster. Will I go to prison? She asked. I don't know. Probably not, if Brielle's right about you being seen as a victim. But your career is over. No advertising agency is going to hire someone connected to an embezzlement scandal. And even if they would, Joel's company is going under. Your job disappeared the moment he got arrested. She sank back onto the couch, the full weight of her choices finally hitting her. What am I going to do? For 22 years, that question would have prompted me to start problem solving, to figure out how we could weather the crisis together. Now, I felt nothing but exhaustion. I don't know, Lana. That's not my problem anymore. The words surprised both of us. She looked up at me with something like shock, as if she'd expected me to start planning her defense strategy. What do you mean? I mean, this marriage is over. You made that decision 3 years ago when you chose Joel over our family. I'm just finally catching up. Hayes, no. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through it. Work through what? The lying, the cheating, the fact that you were planning to run away to Arizona with stolen money? What part of that is fixable? I walked to the kitchen, needing distance from her tears and the evidence of her betrayal. My hands shook as I poured a glass of water, the normalcy of the action feeling surreal after everything that had happened. Lana followed me, her makeup streaked, and her perfect composure finally shattered. Please don't give up on us. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we have 22 years together. We have children. We have children who are going to find out their mother was having an affair with a man who's now in federal prison. We have children who are going to see their family destroyed in the most public way possible when this hits the news. She hadn't thought of that yet. The publicity. Joel's arrest would be in the papers, and his company's collapse would affect dozens of employees and clients. Lana's name would be connected to all of it. Amelia and Ross don't have to know the details, she said desperately. They're not children, Lana. They're adults with internet access and functioning brains. You think they won't put the pieces together when their mother's boss gets arrested for embezzlement and their parents suddenly get divorced? My phone buzzed with a text message. Mark, my colleague. Just saw the news about Joel Reimer. Holy hell, man. You okay? If Mark had already heard about the arrest, it would be everywhere by morning. Joel Reimer wasn't just some anonymous businessman. His company handled major accounts, employed 50 people, had been featured in the business section multiple times over the years. I showed Lana the text. Her face went even paler. "It's already starting," I said. "By tomorrow, everyone will know. Your friends, our neighbors, the kids' friends, everyone." She slumped against the kitchen counter. "What do you want me to do? Move out?" The question hung in the air. What did I want? A week ago, I'd wanted to save our marriage. A day ago, I'd wanted to confront her about the affair and find a way to rebuild trust. Now, looking at her tear-streaked face, I felt nothing but emptiness. "I want you to tell me the truth," I said finally. "All of it. Not the version where you're the victim of circumstance, not the version where this is somehow my fault. The real truth about what you did and why you did it." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the floor. When she looked up, something had changed in her expression. A hardness I'd never seen before. "You want the truth? Fine. Joel made me feel alive again. He made me feel beautiful and desirable and interesting. When I was with him, I wasn't just Hayes Rellin's wife or Amelia and Ross's mother. I was myself. The honesty was brutal, but I'd asked for it. He took me to places you never would have thought of, bought me things you never would have splurged on. He made me laugh, made me feel like I was worth pursuing. When was the last time you pursued me, Hayes? When was the last time you made me feel like you actually wanted to be with me, instead of just going through the motions?" "So you decided to go through the motions with him instead?" "I decided to feel something again. Even if it was wrong, even if it was selfish. It was better than the nothing I felt at home." There it was, the truth I'd demanded. Our marriage hadn't just died from neglect. It had been murdered by her need for excitement, for validation, for something I apparently couldn't provide. And the money? The gifts? She shrugged, a gesture so casual it made my chest ache. I liked being spoiled. I liked feeling special. I liked having secrets, having a part of my life that was just mine. Even though the money was stolen, I didn't know it was stolen when I accepted it. And honestly, even if I had known, I'm not sure it would have mattered. I was already lying to you every day. What was one more secret? The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. This wasn't the woman I'd married, the woman who'd cried at movies and brought soup to sick neighbors. This was someone else entirely, someone who'd been hiding behind Lana's face for 3 years. "Get out," I said quietly. "Hayes, get out of my house, tonight. Pack whatever you need and leave." "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't care. Hotel, friend's house, your parents, anywhere but here." She stared at me for a moment, and I saw her calculating, trying to figure out if I was serious. When she realized I was, her expression shifted again, becoming cold and defensive. "Fine. But this house is half mine, Hayes. You can't just kick me out permanently. Watch me." She turned and walked toward the stairs, her spine straight and defiant. I listened to her moving around upstairs, opening drawers and closets, packing her things. The sounds felt final, like the last notes of a song I'd been hearing my whole adult life. 20 minutes later, she came back downstairs with 2 suitcases and her laptop bag. She paused at the front door, looking back at me. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what it's worth, I really am sorry it ended this way." "No, you're not," I replied. "You're sorry you got caught." The door closed behind her with a soft click, and I was alone in the house where we'd raised our children, celebrated anniversaries, built what I'd thought was a life together. The silence felt different now, not peaceful, but hollow, like the inside of an empty shell. I walked back to the living room and gathered up the papers Brielle had left behind. Evidence of my wife's betrayal, documented in receipts and bank statements and phone records. I should probably keep them for the divorce proceedings, but looking at them made me feel sick. My phone rang, startling me. Ross's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, Dad, I just saw something weird on the news about Mom's boss. Is everything okay?" I closed my eyes, trying to figure out how to explain that everything was definitely not okay, that his mother was gone, and his family was broken, and nothing would ever be the same again. It's complicated, son. Can I call you back tomorrow? There are some things your mom and I need to discuss with you and Amelia. Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on? Tomorrow, I repeated. I promise I'll explain everything tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat in my recliner and stared at the coffee table where the evidence of my marriage's destruction was still scattered. In a few hours, I'd have to figure out how to tell my children that their family was over. I'd have to call a lawyer, start divorce proceedings, begin the process of untangling 22 years of shared life. But tonight, I just sat in the silence and tried to figure out who I was without the identity I'd worn for more than half my life. Hayes Rellin, husband and father, now just Hayes Rellin, divorced father of two, whose wife had preferred a criminal to him. The grandfather clock chimed midnight, marking the end of the longest day of my life and the beginning of whatever came next. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad, making lists like I was preparing for tax season. Assets to protect, accounts to separate, people to notify. The accountant in me needed order, needed to quantify the damage and create a plan for moving forward. By 6 a.m., I had 3 pages of notes and a headache that felt like someone was using my skull for target practice. The coffee maker gurgled to life on its timer, a sound that had marked the beginning of thousands of ordinary mornings. Nothing about this morning felt ordinary. My phone buzzed with a text from Amelia. Dad, Ross told me something happened with Mom's work. Call me when you can. Another buzz, this one from my brother in Denver. Saw the news about Joel Reimer. Isn't that Lana's boss? Everything okay? If my brother in Colorado had heard about Joel's arrest, the story was spreading fast. I turned on the local news and found it as the 3rd story. Local advertising executive arrested in embezzlement scheme. Joel's company photo filled the screen while the anchor described the charges and the ongoing investigation. They didn't mention Lana by name, but they didn't need to. Anyone who knew she worked at Reimer and Associates would connect the dots quickly enough. I was pouring my 2nd cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, holding what looked like a casserole dish. She had the expression of someone delivering condolences, which I supposed she was. Hayes, dear, she said when I opened the door. I heard about the trouble at Lana's company. How awful for all of you. Mrs. Patterson was 73 and had lived next door for 15 years. She knew everyone's business and shared it freely, usually under the guise of concern or helpfulness. It's been a difficult time, I said, accepting the casserole. Thank you for thinking of us. Where is Lana? I imagine she's devastated, losing her job like this. She's staying with friends right now, while we figure things out. Mrs. Patterson's eyes sharpened. She could sense tension, the way sharks could sense movement in the water. Well, if there's anything you need, anything at all, you just let me know. These kinds of situations can be so hard on families. After she left, I set the casserole in the refrigerator and wondered how long I could keep up the fiction that this was just about Lana losing her job. The truth would come out eventually. It always did in neighborhoods like ours, where everyone knew everyone and secrets were just gossip waiting to happen. My phone rang. Lana's name on the screen. Hayes, we need to talk. I thought we covered everything last night. The FBI wants to interview me. This afternoon, I need a lawyer. I felt a moment of satisfaction at the panic in her voice, followed immediately by guilt for feeling satisfied. Whatever she'd done, she was still the mother of my children. Then get a lawyer. I don't know any criminal lawyers. I don't know how this works. I've never... Her voice broke. I'm scared, Hayes. For 22 years, that tone would have melted my resolve. I would have dropped everything to help her, to fix whatever problem she was facing. Now, it just made me tired. Call the State Bar Association. They have referral services. I can't afford a criminal lawyer. Joel's assets are frozen. My job is gone. I have maybe $3,000 in my personal account. That's not my problem. Hayes, please. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I'm drowning here. I need help. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to solve her crisis. What exactly do you want from me, Lana? Money for a lawyer. Just a loan. Something to get me through this. Money from our joint accounts? The accounts you've been secretly draining for 3 years to cover your expenses while Joel bought you jewelry? Silence on the other end. How much? I asked, hating myself for the question. 10,000, maybe 15. Just enough for a retainer and… No. Hayes, you made your choices, Lana. You chose Joel over our marriage, excitement over stability, lies over truth. Now you get to live with the consequences. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but whether from anger or adrenaline, I couldn't tell. The phone rang again immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Then again, voicemail. On the third call, I answered. Hanging up on me won't make this go away, Lana said. We're still married. We still have children together. You can't just abandon me. I'm not abandoning you. I'm protecting myself and our kids from the consequences of your actions. There's a difference. Our kids? Hayes, if I get charged with a crime, if this goes to trial, it'll be in every newspaper in the state. How is that protecting them? She had a point, much as I hated to admit it. Amelia and Ross would suffer regardless of what happened between Lana and me. Their mother being connected to a federal embezzlement case would follow them for years. What do you want me to do? I asked. Help me get a good lawyer. Someone who can make this go away quietly. Maybe work out a plea deal that keeps me out of prison and out of the headlines. And in exchange? I'll agree to whatever divorce terms you want. The house, the retirement accounts, custody arrangements, whatever you think is fair. I almost laughed. After 22 years of marriage, she was trying to negotiate a divorce settlement based on her immediate legal needs. I'll think about it, I said. The FBI interview is at 2 o'clock. I need an answer before then. Then you better hope I think fast. I hung up and immediately called Mark at the office. Jesus, Hayes, I was just about to call you. This Joel Reimer thing is all over the news. How's Lana handling it? She's not. She needs a criminal lawyer for an FBI interview this afternoon. Mark was quiet for a moment. FBI interview. Hayes, what aren't you telling me? I gave him the abbreviated version. The affair, the gifts, the potential for Lana to be charged as an accessory or accomplice. Mark listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of disbelief. Holy hell, he said when I finished. And I thought my divorce was messy. Do you know any criminal lawyers? A few. But Hayes, you need to be careful here. If Lana gets charged, they might come after your assets too. Anything she bought with Joel's money, anything that could be considered proceeds of the embezzlement, they can seize it all. I hadn't thought of that. The bracelet, the spa weekend, even dinners at expensive restaurants. If the FBI could prove they were paid for with stolen money, they might consider our entire household contaminated. I need to talk to a lawyer myself, I said. Divorce lawyer or criminal lawyer? Both, probably. Mark gave me 2 names and phone numbers. I spent the next hour making calls, explaining my situation to legal secretaries, and scheduling consultations. By noon, I had appointments with a divorce attorney for Thursday and a criminal defense lawyer for Friday. The criminal lawyer, Patricia Moss, agreed to take Lana's case if I could provide a $20,000 retainer by 1 o'clock. $20,000 to keep my wife out of federal prison for crimes she'd committed while cheating on me. I stared at the number I'd written on my legal pad. $20,000 would come from our savings account. Money we'd accumulated together over 22 years. Money I'd planned to use for retirement or the kids' weddings or a dozen other dreams that seemed naive now. But if I didn't pay it, Lana would face the FBI alone, probably get charged, definitely get convicted, and certainly drag our family through months of public humiliation. Amelia and Ross would spend their 20s explaining why their mother was in federal prison. I called the bank and authorized the wire transfer. Then I called Lana. Patricia Moss will represent you. Her office is downtown, 4th floor of the Meridian building. Be there at 1:30. Hayes, thank you. I know this is the last time, I interrupted. The last time I clean up your mess. The last time I protect you from your own choices. After today, you're on your own. I understand. Do you? Because I don't think you understand anything. I don't think you understand that our children will never look at you the same way. I don't think you understand that our friends will choose sides, and most of them will choose mine. I don't think you understand that you threw away a family for jewelry and hotel rooms. Hayes, I don't think you understand that I loved you, really loved you for more than half my life, and you decided that wasn't enough. I hung up before she could respond, then turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear her voice again, didn't want to risk being pulled back into her crisis. Instead, I called Amelia. Dad, finally, Ross and I have been worried sick. What's going on? Can you come home this weekend? Both of you? There are some things we need to discuss as a family. Is Mom okay? She hasn't answered any of my texts. Your mom is dealing with some legal issues related to her job, but she's safe, and she has a lawyer helping her. Legal issues? Dad, you're scaring me. I'll explain everything when you get here. Can you drive up Friday night? Of course. Ross can come too. Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced? The question hit me like a physical blow. My 19-year-old daughter had figured out in one phone conversation what I'd been blind to for 3 years. Yes, I said simply. We are. Amelia was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Dad. I know you guys have been having problems, but I hoped. I'm just sorry. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. After I hung up, I sat in my empty house and tried to imagine what I would say to my children when they came home. How do you explain that their mother had been living a lie? How do you help them understand that sometimes people you love make choices that destroy everything you thought you knew about them? Outside, Mrs. Patterson was working in her garden, occasionally glancing toward my house. By evening, she'd probably have figured out that Lana wasn't coming back, and by tomorrow, the whole neighborhood would know that the Rellins were getting divorced. I opened my laptop and started researching divorce procedures in Minnesota. Community property, asset division, custody arrangements, a whole new vocabulary for the end of a marriage. Somewhere across town, my wife was sitting in a lawyer's office, explaining to the FBI how she'd accidentally become involved with a federal criminal. Somewhere else, Joel Reimer was in a jail cell, probably wondering how his perfect plan had fallen apart so completely. And here I was, alone in the house where I'd thought I was building a life, learning how to tear it all down instead. Friday evening arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood as I watched for Ross's car from the living room window. I'd spent the week in a strange limbo, going to work, coming home to an empty house, fielding concerned calls from friends and family who'd heard about Joel's arrest and were trying to figure out how it affected us. The official story I'd been telling was simple. Lana's company had collapsed due to her boss's criminal activity, she was cooperating with the investigation, and we were dealing with the financial stress as a family. It wasn't technically a lie, just an incomplete truth. Ross pulled into the driveway at 6:30, Amelia climbing out of the passenger seat. They both looked worried, the way children do when they sense their parents are in crisis, but don't know the extent of it. I met them at the door, hugging them both longer than usual. Amelia felt small in my arms, despite being nearly as tall as her mother. Ross had my build, but Lana's eyes, a combination that usually made me proud, but now just reminded me of everything we were about to lose. "Where's Mom?" Amelia asked, looking around the house as if Lana might be hiding somewhere. "She's staying with a friend while we work through some things. I said. "Come on, let's sit down. We need to talk." They followed me to the living room, settling on the couch together, the way they had as children when facing parental authority. The sight made my chest ache. "How much do you know about what happened at your mom's company?" I asked. "Just what was on the news," Ross said. "Her boss got arrested for stealing money. The company's shutting down. That's part of it. But there's more, and it's going to be difficult to hear." I'd rehearsed this conversation a dozen times in my head, but sitting across from my children, I couldn't find the right words. How do you destroy their image of their mother gently? "Your mom and Joel Reimer were having an affair," I said finally. "It lasted 3 years." The silence that followed was deafening. Amelia's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally a kind of sick understanding. Ross just stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "That's not possible," Amelia said. "Mom wouldn't do that. I have documentation, phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts. It's not speculation, sweetheart. It's fact." Ross found his voice. "How long have you known?" "I found out Monday night. Joel's wife came to the house and showed me the evidence." "His wife knew?" Amelia's voice was getting higher. "She knew and told you instead of Mom?" I explained about Brielle's investigation, about how the affair had led to the discovery of Joel's embezzlement, about how Lana had unknowingly accepted gifts bought with stolen money. "So Mom's in trouble with the FBI?" Ross asked. "She has a lawyer. She's cooperating with the investigation. Hopefully, she won't be charged with anything." "But you're getting divorced." It wasn't a question from Amelia, just a flat statement of fact. "Yes. Because of the affair. Because of the lies. The affair was just the symptom. Your mother built an entire secret life over 3 years. She lied to me every single day, and she was planning to leave with Joel for Arizona." Amelia started crying then, not the dramatic tears of a teenager, but the quiet, devastating sobs of someone whose world has just shifted off its axis. Ross put his arm around her, but his own eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry you have to hear this, that you have to deal with this. None of this is your fault." "Will we have to testify or anything?" Ross asked. "If there's a trial?" "I don't think so. You weren't involved in any of this." "What about school?" Amelia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "People are going to find out, aren't they? They're going to know our mom was sleeping with a criminal." The practical concerns were starting to hit them, the same ones that had been keeping me awake at night. Our family's private disaster was about to become public knowledge. "Maybe not," I said, though I didn't believe it. "The media might not dig that deep into Joel's personal life." "Dad," Ross said gently, "this is going to be everywhere. Mom's company was huge. Joel's arrest is already big news. When people start investigating who he was involved with..." He was right, of course. Ross had inherited my analytical mind along with Lana's eyes. He could see the trajectory as clearly as I could. "We'll deal with it," I said. "Whatever happens, we'll get through it together." "Where will Mom live?" Amelia asked. "After the divorce?" "I don't know. That's something she'll have to figure out." "Will we still see her?" The question I'd been dreading. How do you maintain a relationship with someone who's destroyed your family? How do you help your children love a mother who's proven herself capable of such sustained deception? "That's up to you," I said. "She's still your mother. What she did to our marriage doesn't change that." "But it does change it," Amelia said. "It changes everything. How am I supposed to trust anything she says ever again?" I didn't have an answer for that. Trust, once broken so completely, might be impossible to rebuild. We ordered pizza and spent the evening talking through the practical implications of divorce. Where everyone would live, how holidays would work, whether Ross and Amelia would change their names when they got married someday to distance themselves from the scandal. Around 10 o'clock, Amelia's phone buzzed with a text. She looked at it and frowned. It's Mom. She wants to know if she can come over tomorrow to talk to us. Ross and Amelia both looked at me, waiting for guidance I didn't feel qualified to give. Do you want to see her? I asked. I don't know, Amelia said. I'm angry at her, but she's still our mom. I think we should, Ross said. We need to hear her side of this. Her side, as if there was some explanation that would make 3 years of lies and betrayal understandable. It's your choice, I said. But if she comes here, I won't be part of the conversation. This is between you and her. Amelia texted back, and within minutes, Lana had responded. She would come at noon tomorrow. That night, I lay in bed listening to my children move around the house. Amelia in her old room, Ross in his. The sounds were comforting and heartbreaking at the same time. Soon, this would no longer be their primary home. They'd be visitors, splitting time between parents, carrying the weight of our failed marriage into their adult lives. I thought about Lana, probably lying awake somewhere across town, preparing what she would say to the children she'd betrayed along with me. Would she try to justify her actions, blame me for driving her away, paint herself as the victim of Joel's manipulation? Saturday morning, I made breakfast for Ross and Amelia, then retreated to my office when Lana's car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I watched her walk to the front door, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married, uncertain, vulnerable, human. Then I remembered the casual cruelty in her voice when she'd admitted to enjoying her secrets, and the sympathy evaporated. I put on headphones and tried to work, but I could hear voices from downstairs, first calm, then raised, then what sounded like crying. After 2 hours, I heard the front door close and Lana's car start. Amelia appeared in my office doorway, her eyes red and puffy. How did it go? I asked. She said she was sorry. She said she never meant for it to happen, that Joel pursued her and she was lonely and made mistakes. Do you believe her? Amelia was quiet for a long moment. I believe she's sorry. I don't believe it was a mistake. 3 years isn't a mistake, Dad. 3 years is a choice you make over and over again. Ross joined us, looking older than his 21 years. She wanted us to understand that she's not a bad person, just someone who made bad decisions. What did you tell her? That we need time, Amelia said. That we can't just pretend this didn't happen because she's sorry now. She asked if we'd visit her, wherever she ends up living, Ross added. We said maybe, eventually. I was proud of them for being honest, for not letting Lana manipulate them into immediate forgiveness. They were handling this better than I had any right to expect. She also said something weird, Amelia continued. She said you were being cruel by not helping her more, that you were punishing her instead of supporting her through a difficult time. The audacity of it took my breath away. Even now, facing the consequences of her own actions, Lana was trying to cast me as the villain. What do you think? I asked. I think she doesn't get to have an affair for 3 years and then complain that you're not being supportive enough, Ross said. That evening, after Ross and Amelia had driven back to school, I sat in my empty house and tried to imagine what came next. Divorce proceedings, asset division, the slow process of untangling a shared life. Eventually, I'd have to figure out how to be single again, how to exist as just Hayes instead of Hayes and Lana. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Rellin, this is Patricia Moss, your wife's attorney. We need to discuss some developments in her case. Can you call me Monday morning? Developments. In my experience, that word never preceded good news. I poured myself a drink and sat on the back porch, looking out at the garden Lana had abandoned. The weeds were taking over, choking out the flowers she'd planted with such care when we'd first moved in. It seemed like a metaphor for everything else, neglect leading to decay, good intentions overwhelmed by poor choices. Monday would bring new complications, new crises to navigate. But tonight, I just sat in the quiet and tried to remember what it felt like to be happy. Patricia Moss's office was downtown in one of those glass towers that made me feel underdressed even in my best suit. I'd spent the weekend dreading this meeting, imagining worst-case scenarios where Lana's legal troubles somehow became my legal troubles. "Mr. Rellin, thank you for coming," Patricia said, gesturing to a chair across from her mahogany desk. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of sharp intelligence that probably made prosecutors nervous. "You said there were developments." "Several. First, the good news. The FBI has decided not to charge your wife with any crimes. They've determined she was an unwitting recipient of stolen funds rather than a knowing participant in the embezzlement scheme." I felt a wave of relief I hadn't expected. Whatever Lana had done to our marriage, I didn't want her in federal prison. "What's the bad news?" "The civil forfeiture case. The government is seizing all assets they can trace to Joel's embezzlement, including gifts he gave to your wife. They want the jewelry, they want reimbursement for the trips, and they want to examine your joint financial accounts for any suspicious transfers." "How much are we talking about?" Patricia consulted a file on her desk. "Approximately $68,000 in gifts and expenses over 3 years. Plus, they're questioning a $15,000 transfer from your joint savings to Lana's personal account last year." I remembered that transfer. Lana had said she needed money for a business opportunity, some freelance consulting work that required upfront costs. Another lie, apparently. "Can they take money from our joint accounts?" "Potentially, if they can prove any of it was used to facilitate the affair or conceal Joel's crimes, yes. They're also looking at your tax returns to see if any of the gifts were reported as income." Of course they weren't. Lana had probably thought of the jewelry and trips as romantic gestures, not taxable income from criminal activity. "What do you need from me?" "Complete financial records for the past 3 years. Bank statements, credit card bills, tax returns, investment accounts, everything. We need to document exactly what came from your legitimate income versus what might be connected to Joel's embezzlement." I nodded, already mentally cataloging the paperwork I'd need to gather. "Anything else?" "Your wife wants to discuss the divorce settlement. She's hoping you'll be generous, given her current circumstances." The audacity was breathtaking. Lana was facing financial ruin due to her own choices, and she wanted me to cushion the blow. "What kind of generous?" "Alimony. She's arguing that as a long-term marriage, she's entitled to spousal support while she rebuilds her career. Given that her professional reputation has been destroyed by the scandal, she may need significant time to find new employment." Her professional reputation was destroyed because she chose to have an affair with a criminal. That's certainly one way to look at it, but Minnesota is a no-fault divorce state. The court won't consider the affair when determining alimony, only the economic circumstances of both parties. I stared out the window at the city below, thinking about the woman I'd loved for 22 years now trying to extract money from me to pay for the consequences of her betrayal. How much does she want? $4,000 a month for 5 years. $240,000, nearly $250,000 to support the woman who destroyed our family. And if I refuse? She'll fight for it in court. Given the length of your marriage and the disparity in your current earning potential, she'd probably get at least half that amount. I did the math quickly. Half would be $2,000 a month for 5 years, still $120,000. I need to think about it. Of course, but Mr. Rellin, there's something else you should consider. The media attention around this case is going to intensify. Joel's trial starts in 6 months, and your wife will likely be called as a witness. The longer your divorce drags out, the more public scrutiny your family will face. She was right. A quick, quiet divorce would be better for everyone, especially Ross and Amelia. What if I agree to the alimony in exchange for other concessions? Such as? She gives up any claim to my retirement accounts, my life insurance, the house. She takes the alimony and walks away from everything else. Patricia made notes on her legal pad. That might be acceptable to her, given her circumstances. She needs immediate income more than long-term assets. And I want a clause about public statements. No interviews, no book deals, no social media posts about our marriage or the divorce. She keeps our private business private. I can draft that language. I left Patricia's office feeling like I'd just negotiated the terms of my own execution. $4,000 a month to make Lana go away quietly, to protect my children from additional embarrassment, to buy myself the right to move on with my life. It was expensive, but probably worth it. That afternoon, I drove to the bank and spent 3 hours with a financial advisor, restructuring my accounts to protect what assets I could from both the divorce settlement and the government's civil forfeiture case. By the time I left, I had a clear picture of my new financial reality: comfortable, but not wealthy, secure, but not extravagant. I was driving home when my phone rang. Brielle Torren's name on the screen. "Hayes, I hope you don't mind me calling. I wanted to see how you were holding up." "As well as can be expected. How are you doing?" "Better than I thought I would be. Joel pled guilty to all charges yesterday. He'll be sentenced next month, but his lawyer thinks he's looking at 12 years in federal prison." 12 years. Joel would be 62 when he got out, his life and career destroyed by his own greed and stupidity. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. "Don't be. He made his choices, just like Lana made hers. We're both better off without them." There was something in her tone, a lightness that hadn't been there during our first meeting. "Are you doing okay financially? With the asset seizures and everything?" "Actually, yes. Because I cooperated with the investigation early, they're letting me keep the house and most of our legitimate assets. Joel's restitution will come from his share of everything, not mine." "That's good news." "Hayes, can I ask you something? Are you angry at me for the way I handled this? For coming to your house that night instead of confronting Joel directly?" I thought about it. Was I angry? Brielle had destroyed my marriage, but she hadn't caused the affair. She'd just exposed it. "No," I said. "I'm grateful, actually. You saved me from wasting more years on a lie." "Good, because I have a proposition for you." That got my attention. "What kind of proposition?" "Joel's company is being liquidated, but there are several clients who need accounting services. Good clients with clean books and steady revenue. I thought you might be interested in taking some of them on." It was a generous offer and a practical one. My own accounting practice could use the additional business, especially with the divorce expenses looming. "Why would you want to help me?" "Because you're a good man who got caught up in someone else's mess, and because I believe in karma. Joel and Lana took something from both of us, and now we have the chance to build something better." I found myself smiling for the first time in weeks. "Send me the client information. I'd be happy to look at it." "I will. And Hayes, don't let this make you cynical. Not everyone is like them." After we hung up, I sat in my car outside the bank and thought about Brielle's words. She was right. Not everyone was like Joel and Lana. Most people were honest, faithful, decent. I'd just been unlucky enough to marry one of the exceptions. That evening, I called Ross and Amelia to update them on the legal developments. They were relieved that Lana wouldn't face criminal charges, but frustrated by the financial implications of her actions. "She's really going to take alimony from you?" Amelia asked. "After everything she did? It's cheaper than fighting her in court, and it means we can finalize the divorce quickly, without a lot of public drama." "I guess," Ross said, "but it still doesn't seem fair." Fair. Nothing about this situation was fair, but fairness was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. "Life isn't fair," I told them, "but we can choose how we respond to unfairness. We can let it make us bitter, or we can learn from it and move forward." "Is that what you're doing? Moving forward?" "I'm trying to. Some days are better than others." 2 weeks later, I sat in a conference room with Patricia Moss, Lana, and her divorce attorney, signing papers that officially ended my marriage. Lana looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of her choices. She'd aged in the months since Joel's arrest, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Hayes," she said as we prepared to leave, "I want you to know that I really am sorry. For all of it." I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time since that night, Brielle had appeared at our door. She seemed like a stranger wearing my wife's face. "I know you are," I said, "but sorry doesn't undo 3 years of lies. Sorry doesn't give me back the marriage I thought we had." "I know. I needed you to know." I nodded and walked out of the conference room, leaving 22 years of marriage behind me like a suit that no longer fit. Outside, the sun was shining, and I realized that for the first time in months, I felt something that might have been hope. Not happiness. That would come later, maybe. But the possibility of happiness. The chance to build something new from the wreckage of what I'd lost. I drove home to my empty house and started planning the rest of my life.